What's going on, everyone? This is Nick with Us versus Herd, and you're tuned in to the very first Us versus Herd podcast. I'm pretty excited. At the same time, I'm pretty scared. The introvert in me doesn't really want to do this, but we're going to rip off the Band-Aid and we're going to get into it. The main reason why I wanted to start the podcast is sometimes there's content that I want to do that's on my heart that's not necessarily a good fit for YouTube, and I think that the podcast will really help also give you some insight, more insight on my life outside of options, as an entrepreneur, just as a person. And we're all in this together, and I just wanted to kind of give you, for the very first podcast, some background of who I am, where I came from, how I grew up, and kind of walk you through the process and my journey, not only as a trader, but as a person, as an entrepreneur, as I go through this, you'll get a good idea of what I've gone through to get to where I wanted to go. And I would say that the majority of my life has been a struggle in terms of just life in general. Didn't grow up wealthy, didn't grow up I grew up in a nice home, loving home, parents. I have 4 other siblings, and I would say that I had a great childhood. I had a fun childhood, but I wouldn't say that it was a privileged childhood. I wouldn't say that we were doing amazing things. We were living like anybody else and getting by like everybody else. I spent most of my life living in a 2-bedroom apartment with my other siblings and sharing a bedroom with them, for the majority of my life. Up until the time that I moved out of my house, but I didn't move out of my parents' house until my 20s, as we'll go through that. But, growing up, I want to give credit to my parents that they've always been there for me. My mom and my dad, they've been great. They've always supported my decisions no matter what. And I want to say, things did get crazy for me for quite a long time. Not everyone, as you guys know, as you guys go through life, not everyone's going to support your decisions, especially when, they're kind of deemed high risk. And I want to say, what I've gone through in my life so far has been pretty high risk. And it's not for everybody. I wouldn't recommend, just because I live my life this way, it's not necessarily a good fit for everybody else. It's not necessarily a good fit for people with a lower risk profile. But for me to get out of where I was, to get out of, the 2-bedroom apartment, to get out of my parents' house, to get things started on my own, it took a lot of risk and it took a lot of work. Nothing here came free. And, kind of going back, early on, I knew, kind of when you grow up, people ask you, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? Do you want to do you want to be a policeman? Do you want to be a firefighter? Do you want to be a doctor? And they have all these things that require, whether they require education, time, fitness, whatever, anything worthwhile requires work. And, my dad, I spent a lot of time with my dad growing up. He was an entrepreneur. He owns his own doctor's practice. And, there was a lot of ups and downs to that where, he was gone sometimes, but then he was there a lot. So it was always a balance. And then, my dad would tell me stories about how my grandfather was an entrepreneur. And, they always say, work with your mind, not with your back. And, as a business owner, one thing that I was taught was, through my dad and my grandparents was that you either work for someone else and you get none of the profit and all the headaches, or you work for yourself and you get all of the profit and all of the headaches. So, in terms of entrepreneurship, that really clicked for me. And, I was always wanting to do my own thing even early on. And as a hobby, I would try to sell anything to anybody. Like I would 6, 7 years old, I would have a pop-up shop and I would invite my friends to come by, see if they want to buy anything. And it was more buying and selling things. I don't know why, but it's always been like a hobby of mine. Like buying something for less and selling it to somebody else for more has always felt good. It always has been like, it wasn't really about the money, but it was about the thrills. Like, hey, I found this thing that I bought and you're willing to buy it for more money, that transaction is kind of what fueled everything that I'm currently going through. Currently what I'm doing right now, even through options trading and everything like that. So, I don't know why, we're just wired that way, but some of us, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur and you understand that, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It's in my DNA, I guess, that you would say that, hey, why do you get a thrill when you buy something for less and sell it for more? And it's just something that I like to do. Like, making money is a hobby for me. It's something that I enjoy doing. Some people like going to the mall, some people like going golf, and none of those things are wrong. None of those things, but it depends on the person. And for me, it was always trying to figure out. For me, it's always the puzzle, figuring out what's next. What can I do to better myself? What can I do to make more money? What can I do to go to the next level? And that has always been something that I enjoy doing. It's not work for me. It's something that I enjoy. People are like, man, you grind out a lot. You must be tired. And yeah, I'm tired, but at the same time, I really enjoy what I do. And early on, selling Pokemon cards, baseball cards, basketball cards, and I was starting to really get the hang of it. And, a lot of people call themselves an entrepreneur. That's like a mini version of an entrepreneur. Right now, entrepreneurship is very trendy, especially like in Instagram profiles, Twitter profiles. Everyone says they're an entrepreneur, but I want to say, kind of like a college degree, you can't say that you have a bachelor's degree if you didn't earn it. You can't say you have associates or a PhD if you didn't earn it. And for me, being an entrepreneur, I wouldn't call myself an entrepreneur if I didn't make it. And what I mean by make it is, if you can't support yourself and the people that depend on you through your endeavors, you're not an entrepreneur. You may have a side hobby, you may have a side hustle that generates money, but you're not a true entrepreneur. And people may get offended by that, but entrepreneurship, the title, I would say it's a rite of passage. It's going through the fire, going through everything that you've been through, and doing the things that you didn't enjoy doing to get the reward. So kind of like I was saying, like, your degree, your PhD or your bachelor's, you had to go through the fire to get those degrees. And same with entrepreneurship. You don't just become an entrepreneur. You don't just say, slap this on my bio, I'm an entrepreneur. You have to go through the fire. You have to make it through. A lot of people, most people don't make it through the fire. That's why I say the title of an entrepreneur, that's earned. It's not given. It's earned. So, kind of get after that little rant there. After I started, when I was like 7 or 8, I was selling baseball cards, Pokemon cards. It wasn't until the internet started to happen, and this was before eBay, where the whole Beanie Baby trend started to happen. And I was literally, I don't even remember, I was selling stuff online before eBay launched. So there were other online marketplaces before eBay launched, right? Or let's say eBay got popular. So there were a lot of other marketplaces, and I really grabbed a hold onto the Beanie Baby fad, I guess you want to call it. And the reason why I really grabbed a hold of it is because I'm not going to say that I ripped off my friends, but there were a lot of people in the neighborhood that didn't know how much things were worth. And because I spent the time and I had the knowledge of what it was going to be worth online and what I could buy it for from my friends or from the people in the neighborhood, I was able to get a good deal. So I didn't have a bank account. I was like 12, 13 years old. I was young, and I was maybe even 11. And I was selling things online, and I was selling these Beanie Babies, and I didn't have a bank account. So what I would do is I would then have them send me a United States Postal Service mail order, which is dangerous, which they would send me. I would then go to the post office, cash that mail order, and then along with that mail their Beanie Baby. And I was selling things. I was 12, 13 years old. I was making a couple $1,000s a month. I mean, things were really popping until obviously things crashed. But the thing that taught me about that experience is, if you have the knowledge, if you know how much things are worth to somebody else, and you know where to get the supply, supply and demand, that really taught me how supply and demand work. So, and the internet, buying things, selling things to complete strangers, never having to meet them, never having to see them. The transaction is done 100% online. You can reach so many people. Then, like back in the day, you would literally have to go, hey, you'd have to post something in the newspaper, or you would have to go through word of mouth and say, hey, if anybody knows somebody looking for a car, let me know because I'm selling one. It wasn't like it is today, where we could post something on Facebook. We with a click of a button, we can literally reach thousands of people, whether they're in your inner circle or just friends of friends of friends. We post something online on Facebook or Twitter, and some people share it. You're immediately in front of thousands of people. So, I want to say, like, as an entrepreneur and going through that really solidified early on what having a business actually means, and how to run one profitably. Obviously, that fad ended. I continually sold things online, but going into the next kind of phase of my life, I was getting older. I was like 13, 14, going on 15. I was like 13, 14, and because we lived in an apartment, I didn't have like a lawnmower or anything to make. I wasn't able to mow lawns or do anything that kind of work. But what I did was I started to shovel snow with my friends. I mean, we live in the Chicago area. Snow gets pretty heavy. The area that I lived in, I lived in an apartment, but there was very nice homes surrounding that with people with money. And so me and my friends, we would go out, we would shovel snow. I asked my friends, like, hey, you guys want to go do this? And they said yes. They didn't really initiate it. I was always trying to initiate moving things forward. And so I got a shovel. My dad took me to get a shovel and started shoveling snow. And we were charging $20 a driveway, and we had to split that between 3 or 4 guys. And at the end of the day, you get like $5 per driveway. And we were making good money. We were making $20, $30, $30, $40 a day per person. Like, hey, that's great. One day I kind of got tired of that, and I was like, okay, worst case scenario, how much do you guys bet I'll go the next door I go up to, instead of charging $20 a driveway, the snow is kind of heavy today, how about we charge $100 a driveway? And I go up to the door, I ring the doorbell, the guy answers the door, and they're like, oh, I'm like, how much would you like to have your driveway shoveled? They're like, oh yeah, sure. And they say, how much is that? I say $100. That person, this was a defining moment for me. That person didn't bat an eye. They said, okay, go ahead. There are 4 of us. So instead of shoveling 4 driveways to make like $25, $20, we were going to shovel 1 driveway to make that money. And that really kind of taught me that, pricing yourself right, being too low, being too high, being right in the middle, pricing matters. Like people were probably saying when we were going around for $20 a driveway, like, man, these kids, they could charge a whole lot more. And people never say, hey, why don't you charge me more money? They never say that. They just say, okay, thanks, have a nice day, go ahead. I'm gonna give you this money. You're gonna come back again and do it. But it was a defining moment for me. It started off as a joke. I'm just like, okay, worst case, the guy's gonna say is no. I'll just say, yeah, I'm just kidding. We'll do it for $20. But the matter of the fact is that he said yes. I was able to shovel his driveway for $100, and I split that with my friends. Was a defining moment as an entrepreneur in terms of business, and I'll never forget that sometimes you have to push boundaries. Sometimes you as an entrepreneur, you can't stay in the lane. You have to keep moving forward. You have to. I mean, now that I'm like reflecting on all this, it's. I'm not saying it's a little bit emotional. I would say that all these things happen that led up to the moment we are in today, but they really have. They really impacted my life in a positive way. My first job, my dad said, the minute you turn 16, you're going to end up paying for things for yourself. Everything was my dad kind of, I would say he was a bit hard on me, and I think that it was good to be hard on me because nothing to him was ever given. My dad lived in a 1-bedroom apartment his whole life, shared it with his sister. He slept on the couch. I mean, and I think that he was hard on me for a reason, because nothing in this world is given. And early on, he would kind of mentor me, I would say, and we would go into different businesses. Like, let's say it was an ice cream shop. He would say, hey, what's wrong here? What did the guy do wrong? What did the guy do right? And we'd always talk about what that business did right. Sometimes if a business closed a couple minutes early and we went and knocked on the door and we went to go into that store and they were closed, and my dad taught me that was bad business, that it was leaving a bad taste in people's mouth, that's not good for returning reoccurring revenue. And a lot of that stuff I got from my dad just hanging out with him, and he would explain to me, in terms of different things that we encountered with different businesses that we went to, what was good and what was bad. But he told me when I was 16 he's not going to pay for my insurance. He won't pay for my cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone before I was 16 anyways. And so I went and I spent all day, the day I turned 16, it was actually the day after, but the day after I turned 16, I drove around and I applied everywhere, because I'm like, hey, this is the first day that, I'm kind of adulting right now. I'm going to get a job. I didn't stop. I got 2 interviews. One was at a pizza place. One was at Panera. I chose Panera, and that was my first real job. And it was working in food service, and I was only working like 3 days a week, but a lot of it was on the weekends, and I was increasing my time. And at that point in time, I was thinking the harder I work, the more that I get, and the more hours that I get. As you guys know, when you first start a job, you're kind of excited and things are different. But after a while, it becomes very mundane with the work. Okay, you're in this job role. They expect you to work the same amount of hours every day, the same time slot, and then make sure you do the same type of work. And my job, because I would go after school, would be closing up, so I'd work from like 3:30 p.m., 4 p.m. to like 9 p.m., 10 p.m., something like that. Whenever Panera decided to close, whenever we were done. So every day I would go there. I would get things ready. I'd put the cream cheese in the containers. I would clean out the bread. I would slice bagels. I would then do, when we get towards close, I would then run through all the steps to make sure everything was clean. And every day it was the same thing. And after a while, that really gets to me. Is like, hey, I've mastered this job role, and all they offer you is, here's a 25-cent raise. I mean, I literally was making, this was 2000, what year is it? 2002 or 2003. I was 16. It was, and actually it was like 2001. So 2001, I was 16 years old. I got hired for like $5.25 an hour. I got bumped up to $5.75 an hour. And eventually when I quit there, I was making like over $6 an hour. And you're like, hey, that sounds terrible. But back then that was not that bad. Minimum wage is not as high as it is now. But that job taught me that it really doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter how much they pay you if you're not progressing, if you're not learning anything, if you're not pushing things to the limits. Like for me, I like things to change. I like things to progress. If I show up every day, the business is the same. I make the same amount of money every day, and I'm not progressing, I get extremely frustrated as a person, and it's hard for me to keep going on. And, just because you work really hard at a job doesn't mean that you're doing any better in life. Sure, you're meeting your deadline. Sure, you're required to do certain things, and it's you have to manage your obligations. You have to meet those obligations, But at the same time, you got to sit back and think about your life. How much time are you wasting here? We don't get much time on this earth. Like, how much time do we have? How much is this going to matter in 20, 30 years? Not a whole lot. I mean, it was good for me to get the experience, but staying in that job wasn't going to change my life. I know people today. I also worked at Starbucks, and I was back then. I was opening in Starbucks, and I was on the weekends. I was working 12-hour shifts downtown Chicago at a restaurant, and I was going to school to be a chef, and I was going to community college and that whole thing. And I'm not saying that path is wrong. I just think that it wasn't the right fit for me. I know people, I was working very hard at the time. My parents weren't paying for any college. They weren't paying for anything. And I was kind of thinking to myself, I could either invest this money in school, or I can invest this money into business or into myself. What's going to have the more bang for its buck? And back then, not going to college was like unheard of. Like, I told I was telling family members, and I was telling people that are really, really structured, and you have to stay by the rules, and you have to do this. And I was telling people what I was doing, and they were really proud of me when I was going to school to be a chef. And at the end of the day, I was working in a restaurant, and I was thinking to myself, I'm going to go to school, get all this debt, and these dudes are not making more than $10 an hour. It's going to take me forever. You're making $10 an hour, working 100 hours a week in a restaurant. Is that something that I want to pursue the rest of my life? Is that something that I want to be doing? And the answer obviously was no. So I shifted to web development. I started to go to school for that. I literally lasted, in terms of school, I literally lasted like 1 month going to web development school, because they were teaching me like, hey, this is the mouse, and this is how you use this. And really, I'm like, man, we're way beyond that. I've been using a computer since like kindergarten, and you're trying to tell me how to use a mouse. And that's really when I felt like college wasn't a fit for me in terms of going to chef school and all that. I mean, I was so frustrated with the way things were going that I actually just left all my knives in my locker. I didn't even go back one day. I just said, that's enough. And when I told family members that I wasn't going to college anymore, they were like, well, what are you going to do? Are you, I'm like, well, I'm just going to work a few years trying to figure this out. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, he's not going back. He's going to be a bum the rest of his life. He's going to be a loser. But when I told my parents I wasn't going to go to school, they didn't say anything. They're just like, okay, fine. That's fine. And I was expecting them to be a bit hard on me, but I would say my parents have been really very supportive, because I've done nothing short of the opposite for what you're supposed to do, technically what you're supposed to do in life. And this path, I feel that I took was obviously the harder one, because it was just nobody was doing that back then. Nobody was not going to school. Nobody was not doing that. But I was investing in myself. So I was still working at Starbucks. I was working at the restaurant downtown, even though I wasn't going to school. But on the trade rides downtown, what I was doing is I was teaching myself web design. So I was reading all these books, and I was just soaking it all up and learning about web design. I was reading books like such as Rich Dad Poor Dad, and just trying to, embrace that. A lot of people, you may have goals, you may have ideas, but sometimes you have to endure the pain. I had to endure the pain of the job. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to start my own thing, but I couldn't because I didn't have the skills. So when I was taking the train downtown, I was reading books, and I was just investing in myself. And I launched my first company. It was a website hosting company. If you don't know what website hosting is, it's basically I was selling storage. I had a server, and I was selling storage. I was like 17. I was selling storage on this web server, and you have to rent that out to people for them to host their website. So when you see a website online, those are actually just files hosted on a server somewhere. They're just stored. So basically think about, you have like an apartment building and you need tenants. It's the same thing. So I had a server, I needed a website hosting. And one of the big things with this was I started this. I had the server, I had a website, I was ready to go. I then emailed the company that I was renting the server from. I'm like, hey, I got this fancy website up. My server's booming. Things are ready to go. I have 0 customers. I put my website online. Where's all my traffic? Where's all the customers? Where's all the orders? And they probably laughed hysterically, like, what is wrong with you? You just launched a website. What's wrong with you? I was so ignorant. I didn't realize. I thought just because you had a website, you were going to get traffic. For some reason, I don't know why I thought that, but for some reason you thought, hey, I have a website online, you're going to get customers. And that was not the case. I launched a website, had 0 customers come through my door or visit my website. And this was another defining moment for me, was like, hey, just because you created something, it doesn't mean anybody's going to see it. It doesn't mean anyone's going to be using it. It doesn't mean you can have the best product in the world, but if nobody sees it, nobody knows about it, nobody is using it, you're not going to be making any money. You're not going to be getting orders. You're not going to be doing anything. And I'm glad these experiences happened, because they made me who I am today. And reflecting on that right now, it's just I guess it's amazing how far you can go from living in ignorance to actually doing something that you love, and something and working within something that you've built. So I learned how to start marketing, and I started getting orders, and things were going okay. I then launched with a buddy of mine a website design company for websites, and just because websites were really starting to take off, small businesses were starting to buy them. And you could really, ask anybody, like, hey, do you need a website? You want to do this? And they're like, oh, yeah, that's great. However, when we launched the business, it was in 2008. And not really thinking about it at the time. And I wasn't really in the stock market at the time, because, growing up, my parents never taught me anything about the stock market. No one ever taught me about financials. And we'll get to that in a second. But 2008, as you guys know, the bottom fell out. There was a big recession. We incorporated 2008. We started selling websites, and we were marketing, and we were landing some deals and stuff like that. But as time went deeper into 2008, 2009, the people we were talking to, we were literally talking to different people. They say, "Oh yeah, come back next week." We would literally go back next week, talk to them, and the windows were boarded up. They literally went out of business. They're like, small businesses were going out of business left and right. We had a small business, and we were trying to stay in business, and for the grace of God, I don't know how we made it through. I think if I had a whole family, thankfully we were both single, and we were just able to work all day, all night on this. But if I had a whole family and we were relying on this income, I think it would be very sketchy. I will admit, I did go to bed hungry a few nights. It was. I'm speechless that we even made it through. I don't even have words. But we worked hard. We made it through, and we transitioned into like IT services. And IT services, what I liked about IT services was it was reoccurring revenue, because these people needed IT services to stay in business on a monthly basis. When you're doing websites, when you do a website, that guy's good for 2 to 3 years, maybe even 5 years if he doesn't really change his business that much. So, he's good for 5 years, and that's you're going to get a couple of dollars out of website updates and stuff like that. But it wasn't anything near what you could charge for IT on a monthly basis. And it was because of transitioning into IT services, it really helped me understand that a lot of business owners, they stay static, and then they go out of business. They don't handle pain very well. They don't know, hey, when things aren't going very well, let's pivot, let's transition, let's try something new. A lot of people just do the same thing, and then they go out of business. One thing that I was taught was, you do the same thing, you're going to get the same results, obviously. So we kind of saw the writing on the wall in terms of income. Hey, we're working really hard here. We'll still do websites, but we're going to offer IT services as well. So then we started offering IT services, and that's when things really started to change my life. The company blew up. I'm still a managing partner in the IT company, and it's a stream of income that I'm currently in, and it's still an amazing business. But through that, it kind of shows you that you always have to change, you always have to adapt, even though now that I would say the business is successful and it's making, really decent money, we have employees, we have health benefits, and we're able to pay rent for office, we own homes. I mean my life has gone completely 180 by understanding that you need to pivot, you need to keep continuing to get better. But the one thing that I was always interested in is options trading, finance, and it's something I would always read. Fortune magazine growing up is always something I was interested in, but I was never exposed to any of that. I didn't know anybody outside of that had they had 401ks and stuff, but no one was actively investing. And I always enjoyed the Wall Street movies. I always enjoyed, looking at the numbers. I always enjoyed that, but I never understood what any of that meant. And I'm like, okay, I need to learn a new skill. I need to look at this stuff. And as an entrepreneur, you have to understand you live or die by learning skills. It depends on what you can offer yourself and what you can offer other people. So at this point, I wasn't afraid to start learning how to trade options and stocks and all that. And obviously, when you're going into it, I started looking at the stock market like 2013, 2014 area. Didn't get really serious until late 2014, early 2015. However, as you guys know, as a new trader, you're doing it all wrong. I was looking at stocks, I was trading penny stocks, I traded Forex. And it wasn't until options that things really clicked for me, that I can use options in a way kind of like Legos. I've always been good at building things. I've always been good at Legos. That's why I was good at coding websites, because you're building something with your hands and your mind and you're able to figure out puzzles. And that's why things really clicked for me in terms of options, because I said, hey, even if I'm wrong about this strategy, I'm able to adjust this position and probably come out with a profit or break even. So that's kind of why I got into options. And then the main reason, and I know you guys probably heard me say this before, but the main reason that I started a YouTube channel was I was doing a lot of research, and I'm an introvert. I'm not gonna shy away from that. I'm not gonna lie about that. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm an introvert, and through IT and through different things, I was watching a documentary on Warren Buffett and all these people. I'm like, how do they get to be successful? How do they get to do what they need to do? What they want to do. And one of the things Warren Buffett was interesting with me was he said, if you can't communicate with people, you're not gonna really get anywhere. And he said that, hanging on his wall in his office, since he was an introvert as well, or is an introvert, as you could probably tell, people like Elon Musk and those people like us kind of talk kind of weird. But he said that to break out of being an introvert for him, like you have to do something to break out of that, to train your brain to speak to people and do something. So he went to, I forget what it was called, but it was some sort of training program where they made you do all sorts of crazy stuff, where they made you like stand on chairs and scream and get uncomfortable and do uncomfortable things. I mean, I've always been uncomfortable giving speeches, going in front of a class, interviews, palms sweaty. I would like I'd have to go to the bathroom before I had any major meeting, or it was, and some people are like, how do you do that? You could just go talk to people and you could just do that. But for me, it was always a struggle. And Warren said that getting a certificate from that place, he's more proud of that certificate than any degree that he has. He hangs that on his wall. If you think about that, Warren Buffett, billionaire, mentor, whatever, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call him, one of the most successful people in the world today, he's more proud of his certificate from this training program on how to break out of being an introvert than he is a college degree. And that really spoke a lot to me in terms of, what I needed to do. So what I did is like, hey, I think that people, I've been getting pretty good at options trading. I've been getting pretty good at trading and looking at these brokerages. I think that we can help people. And through us versus herd, as you guys see today, we have a really nice community of people, of traders, and we're all bouncing ideas off of each other, and we're making this thing work, right? But in terms of me as an introvert, like this podcast, I'm nervous about it, but at the same time, I've been doing this for a few years now, where I'm able to. It really helped me with the YouTube channel. If you're an introvert listening to this, start a YouTube channel. But some videos I would talk too fast, and I would get really, really, really nervous before any videos, and I would start videos, stop videos, start videos, stop videos, and never able to record them until one day I just said, screw it, we're gonna go all in. And I got a lot of hate over the years, I got a lot of positivity, but because of the positivity, I was able to push forward, and because I was able to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, I don't really feel those pains anymore. I'm able to just go on, do a video, I'm able to just talk to people, and I'm not saying I'm cured by any means, but I'm a lot less anxious than I was a few years ago than without it. So, I want to say thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for listening to this very first podcast. We're trying some new things here at Us versus Herd, and trying to give you more tools, give you more resources, and give you some insight. So, definitely appreciate you hearing my story. If you guys want to reach out to me, you know how to get in contact with me. Us versus Herd. Look us up on Google, YouTube, wherever, Instagram. We're in Discord. We're on Facebook. So, as always, stay safe, stay green. It's Us versus Herd.